Welcome back. So I know I'm like a few weeks behind everybody else on reviewing this device, but I have excuses. School has been kicking my butt recently, and procrastination is a mean dog. And that's not really going to slow down for the next 2 or 3 weeks, but I do have a week-long break, so this is where my time's going. Also, thank you for 700 subscribers. The growth on this channel has been incredible for the last 1 to 2 months, and I really appreciate it. So thank you all for the support, and I'll try and get videos out whenever I can. But now that that's all out of the way, let's get into the review. Now get a snack, sit down, get comfy, because this script is 6 pages long, so it's one of my longer videos. So just one quick thing, this device for me was bought as an emulation device. I didn't buy it for PS5, PS4, Stadia, Xbox Game Pass streaming, nor did I buy it for anything other than emulation. So if you're looking for something like that, I have videos linked in the description to channels like RG Geek and Retro Game Corps that both have videos testing out streaming on this device. So let's get into the specs. The Pro model, which is the one I have, has a 2.8 GHz octa-core Snapdragon SD845 CPU, an Adreno 630 GPU clocked at 787 MHz. It has 8 GB of RAM, 128 GB of storage, a 5.98-inch 16:9 1080p screen, a 6600 mAh battery, a USB-C port, a mini HDMI port, a headphone jack, and it runs Android 10 with the ability to run Linux and Windows. I'm interested in Windows, but this thing is currently running Android, so this review will only be covering the Android side of things. But look out in the future, I may put out a video talking about Windows on this device. But let's get into the hardware, as I think this is the best feeling handheld I've ever used. I have the Nintendo Switch and the Powkiddy X18S here, as the Switch is going to be similar in price to the Odin, as I think the Odin is going to retail for about $290, or at least that's what the Indiegogo page says, and the Switch retails for about $300. But the X18S is a device I spend a lot of time with, so I think it's only fair I compare it to this, but they're not necessarily that close in price range. But this is my channel, so I get to do what I want. Also, the Switch I'm going to be comparing it to is the launch model Switch, the one without an OLED screen. It has a 6.2-inch display, so if you have an OLED Switch, this is not a good comparison. This is for the launch Switch. The screen on here is beautiful. It's a 1080p screen, and it's smaller than the Switch's screen, but it's still really pretty at 1080p. This Switch's screen is 720p, and it's an LCD screen, but the OLED model is OLED. So between this and the OLED model, it would probably be a tie, but compared to the launch Switch, or like the December Switch, it's basically launch Switch, that I have here, it's a no-brainer. This has a better screen. The screen on the X18S is fine. I'm not entirely sure if it's 720p or 1080p. I feel like mostly will be used for stuff like GameCube games, which runs at like 480p, so it won't even matter. And even upscaling it, I'm not even sure this device would be able to handle that. So this thing, not great. The joysticks on here are like the exact same ones used in the Switch, but they don't travel as far from side to side, which I guess could be seen as a negative, but it hasn't hindered the experience in any way. I guess the only thing that would be an issue is if this device starts to have drifting issues on the joystick, because the Switch is already prone to that. And I know a lot of other devices get a pass because it's like you're not going to use them enough to have drift. But this device is an Android gaming device, so you're going to use it enough to experience some kind of drift. I haven't taken it apart, nor have I looked at any teardowns, so I hope this thing is easily replaceable, especially the joysticks, like easily right to repair, like stuff like that. But if it's not, then that's going to become a problem. In comparison, the X18S's thumbstick, the left thumbstick, has already worn down on me. I've had this thing for like, 2 months? And this thing is already worn down? Whatever material they used on the thumbstick starts to move whenever I move the thumbstick, so it just slides around. I can literally twirl it if I want. The right stick, I haven't used enough to have that happen, but it's like so bothersome that like they didn't test out the hardware that much. The ABXY buttons on here feel really nice. They're raised a little bit compared to the Joy-Con buttons, but I don't really see that as a negative. And there's also a bit of like feedback and pressure that has to be applied to it compared to the Joy-Con buttons to get these things to be registered. The buttons are laid out in the kind of like Nintendo way, which is kind of annoying, I guess, because a lot of, like, if you put Windows on here, if you try to use Game Pass or whatever, it's going to register it kind of like flipped. But I use Nintendo emulators, so that's not going to be an issue for me. The Joy-Con buttons are nice. Like, they're good for what they are, but I kind of just wish they had, like, more of a feedback. Like, compared to the Odins, I just like the Odins better. The X18S's buttons feel like garbage. They're not clicky, and they don't have, like, any feedback or pressure required at all. It's just a bad design. This D-pad is probably the nicest one I felt in a, like, device yet. Even compared to the RGB 10 Max, it's up there. I can't get that thing to work anymore. But this is more like, I've heard it compared to a PS Vita's D-pad, and I can see it. I've never owned a PS Vita though, so I can't compare it. But this D-pad does feel really nice. It's like a nice design. It feels really good in the hands. And it has like really nice clicky. It feels like I'm pushing down like an actual button while also being like on a ball like the old Nintendo ones used to be. It's really nice. The Joy-Con don't have a D-pad. The Joy-Con were made for like portable 2-player and on-the-go multiplayer, so I guess that can kind of excuse the lack of a D-pad. And the buttons are nice, I just prefer a D-pad. But I don't have the Pro Controller with me right now, but the Pro Controller's D-pad is like not great. It's not a good D-pad. And the X18S's D-pad doesn't even feel like I'm pressing down on anything. It's like the buttons, but worse. I don't even know how that's possible. Maybe AYN can inspire Powkitty to make a good D-pad. Glad I can stop talking about that now. But the D-pad on here is really nice, even if I'm not going to use it extensively, because I feel like this device was made for more 3D games and, yeah, like 3D games and like GameCube and Wii emulation. Because if you want 2D games, there are much cheaper devices that you can buy with much better form factors for like old games like that. But this thing is really nice, and I really enjoyed the D-pad. But oh my god, the grips on here improve the gameplay experience tenfold. I thought that since this thing is smaller than the Switch, it would be less comfortable to hold, but I think it's actually more comfortable. Because the grips on here have this like curvature to it that the Switch Joy-Cons just don't have. And it makes it so much more comfortable when your hands like try to rest on it and it's like curved, like you see curved. My hands are curved while on the Switch, and it's like very uncomfortable to hold it like flat. But with the Odin, they're like nicely curved on it, and it like makes my hands cramp up less while playing it, even though it's like a smaller device in comparison. Like it's even more comfortable than the Switch in like the Satisfy grip. Like this thing is made to give you a better experience while playing it, and yet this feels nicer. It's weird. The rounded edges make reaching the A, B, X, Y buttons and like the joysticks and the D-pad much easier than it is on something like the Switch. Because the Switch, it's like flat edges. So it's like reaching the A button, I have to like flatten out my thumb. It's like very uncomfortable. And this thing has been on the market for what, 5 years now? Nintendo has had a ton of time to make curved Joy-Cons, or like Pro Controller style Joy-Cons, and charge us insane amounts of money for it. And yet a smaller company beat them to more comfortable grips on their first product. But rant aside, this thing feels much more comfortable to use, say on the bus or on just sitting at my desk like I do, compared to something like the Switch. Moving on to software, this thing comes with the skin of Android that's actually pretty nice. So nice, in fact, that I haven't changed the launcher or the wallpaper yet, after having this thing for like 3 weeks and using it a ton. The home screen is usable. It's not the best it could be, but it's really nice. It comes with some stock Android apps that like you'd expect, like the Google Play Store, files, and stuff like that. But that's really it. You need to install the emulators and ROMs yourself, and it works great out of the box, just like on any Android device. It's what you'd expect. Pulling down the control center gives you the ability to change the performance mode, which I usually leave in performance mode. It also allows you to toggle the blue lights on the side and under the thumbsticks. I don't think this will drain too much battery life, and it's a nice addition, so cool. Gold star. It has this cool Odin wallpaper, but that's really all there is to the stock launcher. It's pretty plain. If you want to try something more interesting, you can try out the Odin launcher. It's an app on the home screen when you start up the device, but you have to actually click the quit button to quit the launcher. Restarting it doesn't exit it. I don't know why I thought it would, but I'm an idiot. So pulling from the left gives us toggles for the lights and the performance mode and different folders for apps. Pulling over from the right gives us toggles for Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, airplane mode, and 4 different settings options. Brightness is self-explanatory. Storage lets you view and edit the apps that are taking up a lot of storage. TV settings changes between the mini HDMI port on the top and the USB-C port on the bottom, and sleep just puts the device into sleep mode. Not sure why you need a button for that when you have a button right on the top of the device that works really well for that, but you do you, I guess. It's a cool launcher, and I understand why people would want to use this, but I just prefer stock Android. It has a 60Hz display, which isn't a problem at all, but using this thing after using my iPhone 13 Pro Max, which has a 120Hz ProMotion display, it kind of makes using this thing for anything other than emulation feel kind of bad. Like scrolling on Instagram or YouTube feels just slower, but I'm a spoiled brat, so that won't be a problem for most people. The screen is beautiful though. This camera just definitely doesn't do it justice. But it's not replacing my phone as a media player anytime soon. The UI and just the device in general are really smooth. I haven't gotten any glitches or bugs or anything showing up, aside from one telling me I need to format my SD card, even though I already did that when I inserted it in the beginning. But it's just really nice to use, and it's something new coming from the last device I bought, the X18S, where to get it into a state where I actually liked using it, I had to install a whole different firmware. So I think that can tell you how much I like this device. I think it's time we move on to what most of you want to hear about, and that's emulation. I've been looking for a device that can play GameCube and Wii games well at an affordable price for a little over a year now, considering I've been in this like emulation YouTube space for like about a year and a half. And I think this is the device that I've been looking for. I have the most amount of nostalgia for Wii and GameCube games as I grew up in the Wii era, and I was obsessed with Luigi's Mansion, which got me into the GameCube as well. And this thing fills all of my needs. Mario Kart Wii, I've been playing a ton of it on this device. It's a really frustrating Mario Kart game, but it's a great time waster as well. Say I'm on the bus or like at lunch, and I'm not talking to anyone, and I have like 10 minutes or 15 minutes to kill. You doing whatever. I'll probably be listening to music off of my phone, but aside from the fact I've already put 9 hours into Chibi Robo, I'll probably choose Mario Kart Wii. Any Mario Kart game is good for like 5 minutes of downtime, but I think this device made me realize I don't really like Mario Kart Double Dash. The track designs aren't that great. The mechanics are cool. The item balancing is bad, and some of the items don't work as well as they do in other Mario Kart games that I prefer better. But before this gets into a review of Mario Kart Double Dash, I think I should say that Mario Kart Wii is the Mario Kart game I'd play the most on here, as you can play 7, but I prefer Wii, as Mario Kart 7 just isn't that much better, and I have more nostalgia for Wii. So. But as I mentioned before, I've put 9 hours into Chibi Robo on the GameCube, and 8.5 into Mario and Luigi Dream Team on Citra MMJ, so I think it's safe to say that this is my new favorite portable emulation device. Maybe even beating out the Switch as like a portable handheld device in general. But these things are in totally different leagues, so it's barely comparable. If you watched my emulation showcase videos, you'll know that this thing can play a lot of systems. Some of them not that well, but it still can play a lot of them. 3DS is really impressive, as it can play a lot of 3DS games at like 3 times resolution. But if you watch the videos, you'll know that there are a few games that it just can't play at all. Like Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, and Paper Mario 6 Star is barely playable. Like if you can deal with having like less than half the normal frame rate, then sure, but like I'm not gonna deal with that. Also, I don't think it's a very good game, so I feel like a lot of issues from the Wii and 3DS like emulation can be blamed on the emulators themselves and not really the device, because I don't think there's any reason Mario Kart 7 should run well, but Paper Mario Sticker Star doesn't. It's all mostly optimization on the part of the developers for the emulators. But pushing past Wii and even trying some like PS2, that's really pushing the device. That's the device itself and the power it has. Like, you're not going to be able to do Wii U or Nintendo Switch games on here. I don't even think there's a Wii U emulator for Android. Briefly touching on the dock, I have mixed feelings about this thing. Also, I've somehow lost the like plastic or glass or whatever like thing goes on the front of it. I don't know how. I think I took it off one day and then somebody moved it and I just haven't found it. But that's not important. And it's just pretty annoying in the end. So, like I've shown before, this thing does not bode well for monitors that aren't 4K. And for 1080p monitors, you're going to need, and if you want to use a dock, you're going to need a mini HDMI to mini HDMI cable, and then use the HDMI port on the side of the dock. Who's going to do that? Not me. But something else you can just do is buy a mini HDMI to a full-size HDMI adapter, and you can still use the GameCube ports on the side of the dock, the N64 ports, while using the top HDMI spot. It's pretty frustrating, but I mean, it works. And it literally says to do that, like, mini HDMI to mini HDMI thing in the dock manual. Like, you don't even include a mini HDMI to mini HDMI cable. What do you expect me to just buy one? Why wouldn't I just buy a mini HDMI adapter? The GameCube and N64 controller ports on here are cool. I feel like they were kind of better on paper than they were actually executed. The GameCube ones work fine. Like, certain emulators just recognize like all the buttons as like one press. So if you press a button on one like thing and then connect another controller, it'll just recognize that as the same press, as long as it's like registered as the same button, like button 97 or something, whatever. But the N64 controller ports have given me like certain issues. Like, the Z button wouldn't map correctly, the L button wouldn't map correctly. None of them really worked well. And it didn't matter which port I used. It was all like it was official Nintendo 64 controller, so I don't know why it had an issue. I feel like it's more on the end of the emulator rather than the dock itself, but the GameCube ports do work pretty well though. The Dolphin emulator I used, I only tried out one game with it, but the Dolphin emulator I used, like, it just mapped all the controls the same, and same for Citra. Certain Dolphin emulators like register the buttons differently, so if you use like the Odin, like the actual Odin buttons, it'll say Odin controller, and then it'll say like port 1 controller if you use the GameCube port. But using MMJ for the Wii emulation, I think it just mapped it all the same, so that was pretty convenient. I tried out 3-player and 2-player Mario Kart Wii multiplayer on MMJ with my brother and then with my friends later in the day yesterday, and 2-player worked fine. Like, after a lap it ran smoothly. 3-player was just not good. I had Mario Kart Wii for the 2-player running at 2 times resolution, and it ran well. But Mario Kart Wii for 3 players, even at 1 times resolution, just did not run well. It ran at like half the frame rate. It was slow. I mean, it was still fun because, like, you know, I'm hanging out with my friends, but it's like, I prefer it to run at full speed. And I had it in the highest performance mode, like, keep in mind. So I wasn't running in standard mode. So if you're going to try and use this for multiplayer for like Mario Kart or whatever, try and use 2-player. Don't try and go to 4-player. 3-player and 4-player is just like a lot. It's not going to run very well. I haven't actually tried out the hard drive space in the back of here, but I'm sure it works fine. And this thing actually works as a switch dock. I've used it before. If you're going to use it as a switch dock, I encourage you to use the official Nintendo brick, like the official Nintendo charger when plugged into the USB-C port, because the Switch is a weird version of like power delivery. So using the official charger, you should be fine. If you're going to use a separate charger, don't put it in a dock. But if you use it as a switch dock, the Ethernet port and the GameCube and N64 controller ports won't work. The USB ports work well though. It's pretty annoying, but like, what are you gonna do? I guess to just sum up my feelings on this device in general, I was really hyped for this device back in August of last year when I first pre-ordered it on their Indiegogo. I backed the device. But as it got delayed more and more, I started getting more and more worried that a lot of what they were saying wouldn't turn out to be true, and that this device wouldn't live up to the hype that AYN had built up. But I'm happy to say that for the most part, it has. There have been some defective units and like faulty units, but I feel like that's kind of just normal for a device launch. Like, I mean, obviously with a smaller device, like it has less backers, you're going to get issues, and they're going to be more prevalent because, you know, you're a new company. You're not going to like know how everything works initially. But I'm happy to say I've had no issues with my device so far. Not to say that you won't, but as I see more and more people get this device, I feel like you have less of a chance of getting a faulty unit. Just, I feel like you're more in the clear now, especially if you order one now. I'm sure they'll be doing like more testing and stuff. I feel like they were just trying to get these out the door sooner. It's a really nice device. I bought this device for its promises in the emulation department. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm not interested in game streaming, like whether it be like streaming over the same Wi-Fi connection, like from my PC using Moonlight, or like Xbox Game Pass, like just over the internet. Like I mentioned before, I will have videos in the description from people like Retro Game Corps or RG Geek who have videos on game streaming on their channel. So go check those out and finish this video first though. I want the watch time. They tested out some things that I haven't necessarily tested out yet, like Stadia, Xbox Game Pass, PS4, PS5 streaming, you know, like stuff like that. So if you're interested in stuff like that, you can go check out their channels. I paid about $300 for this device and the dock in total. The dock is about $50, so if you pay $290 for it right now, it'll be about like $340. So I guess that's I guess that's a good deal if I can speak English. The dock is a different story. I thought it would be cooler than it is, but the device is definitely worth it. The base is nice. I'm not gonna say that it's not gonna be worth it. I think the added RAM doesn't really add much for emulation. So if you're doing this for emulation like I am, it won't be that much of a difference for Android emulation. But if you're looking for like Android gaming, stuff like that, you probably want more RAM. And the Pro is like just not that much more expensive than the base. So I think you should go for the Pro if you can. I used to think that you'd have to spend upwards of like $1,000 to play Wii games portably, like those devices, like the AYN Neo, whatever it is right now, like they wouldn't answer my emails about. Aya, you wanna answer my email? No, I'm joking. I don't have a big enough channel for review devices. If you are looking for a device to play PS1, some PS2, GameCube, Wii, N64, stuff like that, this device is definitely worth it. If you're only looking for N64, there are probably some other devices that will be more like worth it, because this thing, I feel like it's geared more towards like bigger 3D games, but it is a really nice device. But if you tinker around with this device more, you'll be able to play a lot of stuff. That's how I get a lot of my emulators running. A lot of devices aren't for like the common folk. I feel like this is like the closest we're gonna get, like right now, to a device that's like for commoners who don't really know how a lot of emulation works, but still requires a lot of tinkering if you want to get like some Wii games to run at like good speeds. Some Wii games are just like stuttery. So, but for $300, I think this is a really good deal. I think this is worth the money. And it has me really hopeful for the future of emulation. If AYN can do this thing for $300, I really hope it pushes their competitors like Powkitty and GPD to do something better for less money. Because they're doing all those like Windows PCs and stuff like that for like $1,000. But if they can push them, because this is popular. Like, let me go to their Indiegogo page. I'm pretty sure they have like $2 million US in backing. 2,292,000 by 6,000 backers. This thing is popular. So if this thing can make enough of an impact to where GPD and Powkitty see the impact that this has, it'll push them to try and do something better. And competition is always great. So I'm excited for the future of emulation, is what I'm trying to say. That's really all I have to say about this device. Thank you for watching this review. I haven't done a review in a while, especially about a device like this. Are you buying it? Are you excited to see the future of emulation like I am? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see you hopefully next week. I'll try and get a video out next week. If I can't, it'll be the weekend or the week after, because I have a lot of tests. But yeah, let me know in the comments. Are you buying this? Also, if you made it this far, why not subscribe? You obviously like my content enough to watch it all the way through. See you later. Bye.